There is a strip mall in North Carolina where, one morning in April of 2025, a dead store came back to life. The lights came on, the doors unlocked, and the shelves stood fully stocked. The sign out front said Big Lots, which was strange because Big Lots, as America knew it, no longer existed. 4 months earlier, this chain had been running going out of business sales at every store it had left, more than 900 of them, in the week before Christmas. The parent company was in bankruptcy court in Delaware. Its rescue buyer had walked away, its shareholders had been wiped out, and the obituaries were already written. And yet here it was, reopening. That North Carolina storefront was one of 9 that morning. Spread across 6 states, the first wave of an afterlife almost nobody in retail saw coming. So this autopsy is a strange one, because the body sits up before the end. It does not change the cause of death. The publicly traded Big Lots, a chain of nearly 1,400 stores doing $6 billion a year, is gone, and the speed of it still startles people who watch retail for a living. The actual fall took about 2 years, but the fatal decision did not happen during those 2 years. It happened earlier, in the middle of the best year the company ever had. Big Lots did not die because Americans stopped loving a bargain. It died because it mistook the best year of its life for the rest of its life. It sold its own safety net at the top of the market, handed the cash to shareholders, and turned itself into a renter, so that when the bad years arrived, there was nothing left to break the fall. And understand, there is no private equity raider in this story, no activist fund, no hostile takeover. Every decision that mattered came from inside the building. To understand those decisions, start in Columbus, Ohio, 1967. A deal-maker named Shenk started a company there with one governing appetite: buying what nobody else wanted. Canceled orders, factory overruns, discontinued lines, abandoned inventory, entire warehouses of merchandise that manufacturers simply needed to disappear. Shenk bought it for pennies on the dollar and passed the strangeness on to customers as a discount. The trade calls it closeout retail. In practice, it meant no 2 visits to his stores were ever the same, and that was precisely the point. In 1982, the company opened its first closeout store in Columbus and called it Odd Lots. It worked immediately, and it spread fast enough to cause trouble. A drugstore giant that owned a similarly named closeout business objected, so as the chain expanded beyond its home turf, the new stores went up under a different sign: Big Lots. By 2001, the company had put that one name on everything and become Big Lots, Incorporated. What it sold, in the kindest possible description, was chaos organized into aisles. One month, a truckload of brand name cereal from a canceled order. The next, patio furniture, pool toys, a wall of discontinued shampoo. Regulars did not come in with a shopping list. They came in to see what the buyers had dragged home this week. Retail people call that a treasure hunt, and Big Lots ran one of the biggest in the country. The chain grew to nearly 1,400 stores across 48 states, reaching everywhere but Alaska and Hawaii. And the model carried a beautiful promise. It should have been recession-proof. When times get tight, bargain hunting stops being a hobby and becomes a survival skill, and the parking lots of a closeout store fill up. A business built on cheap should, in theory, be the last store standing in any storm. Then came 2020, and for a discount chain full of home goods, the pandemic turned out to be a jackpot. The country was locked in its living rooms, staring at its own furniture, with stimulus checks arriving in waves, and Big Lots had just made what looked like a genius move. In 2018, it had picked up Broyhill, an old and trusted American furniture name, and it rolled the brand out across its stores in early 2020, months before the world shut down. The timing could not have been scripted better. Couches, patio sets, home office desks, all of it flew out the doors of a chain that suddenly looked less like a closeout house and more like America's budget furniture store. The numbers from that fiscal year still look unreal. Sales hit $6.2 billion, up more than 16%. Comparable store sales grew 16%. Reported profit came in at $629 million, far and away the best result in company history. Champagne in Columbus. But hold that profit number up to the light, because more than half of it did not come from selling anything in a store. It came from a single transaction, and that transaction is where this autopsy finds the wound. In June of 2020, Big Lots sold its 4 distribution centers in Ohio, Oklahoma, Alabama, and Pennsylvania. 7.5 million square feet of warehouse, the logistical spine of the whole operation, went to a real estate investment firm for $725 million, roughly $550 million after taxes and costs. Then Big Lots leased those exact same buildings back on long-term leases and carried on as if nothing had changed. The maneuver is called a sale-leaseback, and on a spreadsheet it looks like free money. You get an enormous pile of cash today, and all it costs is rent, forever, on buildings you used to own outright. It is the corporate version of selling your paid-off house and renting it back from the new owner. From the street, nothing looks different. Underneath, everything is. Now, a company can survive a sale-leaseback if it treats the cash like a parachute. Big Lots treated it like confetti. In 2021, riding the pandemic sugar high, the company spent more than $300 million buying back its own shares at prices the stock would never see again. It kept paying a dividend too, 30 cents a quarter, and those checks kept going out well into 2023, deep into 9-figure losses. There was a quieter cost as well. Chasing the boom, Big Lots leaned harder into furniture and everyday home merchandise, the predictable kind, and drifted away from the scrappy closeout buying that built it. It was becoming an ordinary discount store with an extraordinary rent bill. And an ordinary store is only as strong as the economy around it. At the start of 2022, Big Lots still looked on paper like a $6 billion retailer. Then the economy turned into precisely the storm this new version of the company could not survive. The stimulus money dried up. Inflation tore through household budgets, interest rates shot upward, and the housing market froze solid. The first purchases American families cut were the exact categories Big Lots had bet everything on: furniture, home, seasonal. In the first quarter of fiscal 2022, comparable sales dropped 17%. For the full year, revenue fell about 11% to $5.5 billion, and the company lost $210 million. That was year 1. Year 2 was worse. Sales slid more than 13% further, down to $4.7 billion. The furniture business shrank by 16%, and the net loss ballooned to $482 million. Add the 2 years together, and the scale of it lands. Roughly $1.5 billion of annual sales evaporated. Nearly $700 million in losses. That is the everything in this video's title, and losing it took almost exactly 2 years. Here is the bitter part. An inflation-squeezed shopper hunting for deals should have been Big Lots' moment, because that is the exact customer Saul Shenk built the company around. Instead, those shoppers streamed into dollar stores and warehouse clubs, while Big Lots, half closeout house and half furniture showroom, no longer gave them a clear reason to walk in. And now the balance sheet mattered. A retailer that owns its buildings can survive years like these. It borrows against the real estate or sells a corner of it and fights on. Big Lots had already sold the real estate at the top, and the money was gone. So in the summer of 2023, it ran the trick one last time. The company sold its California distribution center and 26 company-owned store locations for $318 million, leasing back what it needed. About $100 million went straight to obligations on that same warehouse, and the rest went to pay down the credit line. Say the sequence out loud, and it is chilling. Big Lots was now selling off what little property it had left to service the debts of the rent-heavy shell it had built with the money from selling everything else. The glass-marked emergency had already been broken. Quick breath before the endgame. If you follow these corporate collapse stories, take a second and subscribe so the next one finds you when it lands. Now, back to Columbus, where the clock is running out. In April of 2024, Big Lots arranged a $200 million emergency loan. By early summer, in a quarterly filing, it admitted in writing that there was substantial doubt about its ability to continue as a going concern. That phrase is accounting language for a patient starting to discuss its own funeral. By midsummer, its lenders had agreed to let it close as many as 315 stores, and the list filled up fast, with closing notices already posted for nearly 300 locations. California alone stood to lose 75. On the 9th of September, 2024, Big Lots filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in Delaware. It still had nearly 1,400 stores, and it lined up more than $700 million in financing to keep the lights on through the process. It also had one lifeline. A private equity firm called Nexus Capital had agreed to buy the business out of bankruptcy and keep it running. Management called it the path forward, and for 3 months the chain shrank and waited. Then, in the week before Christmas, the lifeline snapped. The Nexus sale collapsed, reportedly after the company's inventory appraised for less than expected, and Big Lots announced going out of business sales at all of its more than 900 remaining stores. Picture that December honestly. 57 years of business ending in every town at once, everything must go banners hanging over the Christmas decorations, shelves picked clean by the same bargain hunters the company had been built to serve. As funerals go, it was at least on brand, one final, enormous closeout. Except the story refused to stay finished. In the last days of December, a new deal surfaced, and by early January it had closed. A firm called Gordon Brothers, a specialist in winding down dead retailers, bought the assets, and standing behind it was an unlikely savior. Variety Wholesalers, a privately held discounter from the South, runs more than 400 small-town stores under names like Rose's. It agreed to take over between 200 and 400 Big Lots locations, plus up to 2 distribution centers, keep the brand alive, and preserve somewhere between 5,000 and 10,000 jobs. Which brings us back to that strip mall in North Carolina. Through the spring of 2025, the survivors reopened in waves, 9 stores in April, then 132 more through May, then a final 78 on the 5th of June. 219 stores in all, out of the nearly 1,400 that entered the final year. So Big Lots technically lives at about 1/6 of its former size, concentrated across the South, owned by a private company whose entire business is the kind of cheap, opportunistic buying Shenk practiced from the very beginning. In a strange way, the circle closed. The brand went home to the closeout business, just without the company that abandoned it. The shareholders of the old Big Lots, meanwhile, received what shareholders of liquidated companies receive, which is nothing. $300 million of buybacks had purchased pieces of exactly that. Zoom out, and the finding on this death certificate is uncomfortable because it was all so voluntary. The pandemic boom flattered plenty of retailers, but Big Lots did the one unforgivable thing. It treated a once-in-a-century windfall as permanent income and sold its foundations to celebrate. Companies rarely die from 2 bad years. They die from having nothing left to absorb them. By the time the storm hit, everything that could have saved Big Lots, the warehouses, the real estate, the cash, had already left the building with a bow on it. So render the verdict yourselves. Was your Big Lots one of the 219 that came back, or one of the 1,000+ that went dark for good? What is the best find you ever hauled out of those aisles, and who killed this company in your book? The real estate deal, the buybacks, or a store that forgot what it was? Make your case in the comments, and somewhere out there tonight, a buyer is walking a warehouse full of things nobody was supposed to want, hunting for the deal of the year. That instinct never goes bankrupt.